listeners, and welcome to the NK News Podcast. I am your host, Jacko Zwetsloot, and this episode was recorded in Seoul on the morning of the Thursday, November 3rd, 2022. And my in-studio guest today is Dr. Yoon In-joo, Research Fellow at the Korea Maritime Institute in Busan. We'll be talking about North Korea maritime and fisheries issues after sanctions and COVID-19, amongst other things. But first, please leave a review about this podcast wherever you get it, whether that's on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. Like and subscribe and share this episode with everybody you know. Secondly, check out NK News, where you can find lots of in-depth stories written by the excellent journalists who I work with every week. You can consider buying a subscription for a year. It's much more affordable than you think. In fact, if you sign up for the annual plan, it's less than $1 a day, and that helps to fund the work that we do here. Thirdly, you can follow nknews.org on Twitter. That's one word. And you can also find me, Jacko Z. Okay, my guest today, Dr. Yoon In-joo, is Research Fellow at the Northern and Polar Regions Research Department at the Korea Maritime Institute in Busan. She does all kinds of research in relation to North Korean maritime industries, tourism, fisheries, and sanctions. Thank you for coming all the way to Seoul, and welcome on the show, In-joo.
Good morning. I'm honored to join your podcast today. Thank you for having me here.
It's good timing, given what's been happening the last few days. It's a good time to talk about maritime issues between North and South Korea. But before we do, first of all, can you tell us briefly what is the Korea Maritime Institute? What does it do? What's its mission and task?
I think many people might heard of KDI, Korea Development Institute, or Kiev, maybe last week.
Yeah, very recently we had Harin Han from Kiev.
So KDI, Kiev, and KMI, we are kind of brothers and sisters.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we are kind of government-affiliated research institute under the Prime Minister's office. But we touch different topics, like, Kiev deals with international economic things, and we touch maritime things. That's the difference.
Right. Okay. And why does KMI carry out so much research on North Korea-related subjects?
Well, actually, we have 28 brothers and sisters under the Prime Minister's office.
Yes.
So all of us are covering North Korean issues.
All of you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So since we're talking about North Korea and South Korea, what agreements are there between the two Koreas on... actually, maybe I should go back before that. Where is the maritime border between the North Korea and South Korea? And do they agree on that, or is there some disagreement?
Maybe if you're Korean, you should know that there is NLL, Northern Limit Line. It's on the sea. Actually, on land, we see MDL, Military Demarcation Line. But the term is different, right?
Right.
So on land, we made the exact clear line, demarcation. But when we go back to the Korean War, at that time, actually the UN forces were in control of, the sea area. So they did not make any line on the sea, but they were afraid that our South Korean fishers could be captured when they just to go, toward the north.
Right.
So they set the line. So we call it limit. They just limit their kind of fishing activities. So it is called the Northern Limit Light. We have two Northern Limit Light in the west and in the sea.
Okay.
So conventionally, this became our boundary.
Right. So the Northern Limit Line in the east between Korea and Japan, that's basically a straight line heading out, basically straight east from the coast of Gangwon Province, Gosong County, isn't it? It's a very straight line.
Yes.
And does it go all the way to Japan? I mean, where does the NLL stop?
Oh, yeah. Actually, according to the conventional international law, one country have an exclusive economic zone. It's called EEZ.
Okay.
At a 200 nautical mile. It's about 370 kilometers.
Right.
But because surrounding Korean Peninsula, the waters are not that broad, so none of us can proclaim our EEZ. We are all overlapped. So in the East Sea, between Korea and Japan, EEZ are overlapped. So NNL ends before the overlapped area.
I see. Okay. And over on the west side, between Korea and China, it's a much more complicated northern limit line because of the five islands, the five western islands of Pengyongdo on the far west, and Yeonpyeongdo, and then there's a few other ones whose names I forget. But that's a more complicated line. And there's some kind of agreement between the two Koreas, isn't there? I think I remember back in 2007, under President Roh Moo-hyun, they had some kind of an agreement. Can you tell us about that?
You mean the agreement on the NLL or
On the
other things?
NLL specifically, yeah.
No, I'm afraid that there is none about the line.
Okay, so there is no agreement on that.
No agreement,
okay.
yes.
So what agreements are there between the two Koreas on, for example, shipping lanes or fisheries or other kinds of things?
In my understanding, there are 4 big official agreements in like overall economic areas. One of them is shipping, because in 2000, that times we made inter-Korean exchanges, and we have to send some things, materials to the north. Only Kaesong Industrial Complex, they use the overland trade, but otherwise we have to use the shipping.
Yeah.
So we made agreement. So according to that agreement, maybe I have to mention 2 things. First, we admit that this inter-Korean shipping is domestic. I'm not exactly domestic, but we are saying that it is not international line.
Okay.
So like you see some international and domestic line in the air.
Yeah.
And on shipping, we just separate international thing and non-international things. So that is the very important thing in that agreement. And second thing is that we made a promise to open 7 ports in the north and in the south.
7 in each, or a total of 7?
In each.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So in south is from west, Incheon, Gunsan, Yeosu, Busan, Ulsan, Pohang, Sokcho. These are 7. And from north, it's starting from Nampo, Haeju, Goseong, Wonsan, Cheongjin, Hameng, Cheongjin, Najin. These 7. So we promised to open those ports.
When was that agreement made?
It was made in 2004 and effective in 2005.
Okay. All right. That was when Roh Moo-hyun was president.
Right, yes.
Right. Okay. But what you say it was effective. I mean, have those ports been open? Has inter-Korean but shipping gone from those 7 southern ports to the 7 northern ports?
Actually, open just 2 from each side, so it's total 4.
I see.
Incheon and Nampo, they made a regular shipping routes.
Okay.
And Busan, Najin, they have irregular shipping route.
So obviously nowadays relations are very bad between North and South Korea, and I'm guessing there's no shipping right now, right? And also COVID is an issue too. But when times were better, when there were ships coming from Nampo to Incheon, were they allowed to cross the NLL, or did they have to go into international waters and come around the NLL? How did that work?
Oh, actually, according to the agreement, they have to go outside. But practically, the agreement was made after the inter-Korean shipping happened.
Yes.
It's just after.
So it was already happening.
Yes. So they already happened route. They just allow them.
Okay, so in theory, they should go to international waters, but in practice, they were actually allowed to cross the NLL.
Yes.
Now, what about on the east coast there? There used to be a ferry from maybe Sokcho to Vladivostok, an international ferry.
Yes.
Did that cross the northern limit line?
Oh, yes, they cross.
Okay, and was that something that North Korea had to agree to, or was North Korea's permission involved in that, or not?
Well, I'm not sure of that. I cannot. I do not have an answer on that. Yeah, I'm so sorry.
Okay, well, so recently this week, in particular, in fact, just a few days before we recorded, North Korea started firing lots of missiles, and there were U.S. and Korea live fire exercises. And yesterday, I think, I've forgotten the exact number, North Korea either fired 23 or 25 missiles. This morning, another one over Japan. South Korea fired some air-to-surface missiles across the border. Is that something that the Korea Maritime Institute studies as well, or is that too much of a security issue so you don't touch it?
Well, it's not exactly my side, but as you know, in Korea, the North Korean issues dominate every issue. So actually, my research topic will be affected by that issue.
Right.
And also we have another department. They are focused on Dokdo, the island, and also maritime international law. So they are touching more about this issue.
Okay, so speaking of international law, the Northern Limit Line, that has no standing in international law. Is that correct?
Oh, well, the UN UNCLOS, United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea.
Right.
It has been made in 1982 something. So before that, it was kind of a conventional things. And after the UNCLOS, we have made some international kind of law system. But the United States and North Korea did not sign on that thing. So could be a little bit awkward if North Korea, US say something based on that law, but conventionally, international law is not fixed correctly with some, articulated words. So sometimes they allow conventional lines, conventional boundaries.
I see.
NLL has been there for several decades.
Since the 1950s,
right. And North Korea did not make any opposition to it since then till 1990s or 2000. So I would say that it could be acceptable conventionally.
So North Korea actually started to raise issues about the NLL quite recently then?
Right.
Just in the last few decades. Do you know why?
Well, I would say that, as I just mentioned, that UNCLOS has been effective from 1982.
Yes.
So after that, about 10 or 20 years, North Korea realized that the importance of the line. They also made such an opposition to China once in 2012. So maybe because they realized the importance of the line, and also some might say that the West Seas dispute is kind of 꽃게. How do you say in English?
Oh, it's the crabs?
Crab,
the
crab war.
Snow crab
yes.
fishing?
Yeah, they know that the snow crab is kind of a big fortune. So they just realize that it is important to keep the line and gain more things.
So it's more of a fishing territory dispute than anything else?
It's kind of one interpretation, yes.
Okay. So what about yesterday? There was I believe North Korea fired a missile across the NLL in the direction of Ulleungdo Island. Now, it did splash down in the sea well short of Ulleungdo, but did it actually come down in South Korean waters?
It came down to our jurisdiction, but not in our territory. Because like in, UNCLOS, we can proclaim our jurisdiction or sovereignty in EEZ, exclusive economic zone. So the missile fell into our EEZ, but not in our territorial water.
So how far do territorial waters go out?
Territorial waters are 22 kilometers.
22 kilometers. And the EEZ, you said, was
370 kilometers.
370 kilometers. Okay, so beyond 22, but before 370, right. That's the EEZ, and that's where the North Korean missile came down. Okay, I don't think that had happened before. Do you see that as a significant event?
Oh, yes, because it's very close to territorial sea, the first ever since the Korean War. That is the significance. So in terms of this kind of maritime boundary things, first of all, I have to mention that they violated our jurisdiction. They just came into our jurisdiction. If it fell into territorial water, it means really a war. So
if they had come closer,
yes, yeah,
within the 22 kilometers, that would have been
war. Yeah, it's just war. So that's why I think they just targeted not very into in territorial water.
How close were they? Do we know?
It was 35 kilometers away from the territorial water.
Okay, so it's 22 plus 35,
yes,
so it's like 77 kilometers from the coast of Korea.
That's the point, yes.
All right, so had they come closer, that could have been very dangerous.
Oh, yes. And then second significance is that even though they are just arguing that we don't just violate your territorial waters, but still they break the agreement made in 2018. We made a buffer zone on land, at sea, and in the air, and they break the agreement. So that is second significance.
I see. Now, South Korea also fired some missiles in response in the direction of North Korean waters. Is that also a breach of that 2018 agreement?
Yes. Because
now both sides are breaching that agreement.
Yes, actually, what we did is actually exactly the same amount of reach toward the north. You did something, and I did.
Okay, yeah. So generally, what is the impact of live fire exercises on normal maritime activity? So before North Korea started to shoot these missiles, the US and Korea, and I think maybe Japan also were involved in these joint live fire exercises. How does that affect normal maritime activities? For example, does the South Korean government order all ships and boats to go back to port until the exercises end?
Oh, yeah. I'm not a military expert, but it's kind of general, common sense. Yeah, they have to do it, make some evacuation.
Okay, so when there are exercises, ships are not out there. But obviously when North Korea is sending missiles, there's no warning about that.
Right,
and so it could, in theory, hit a fishing boat or an oil tanker or an LNG tanker or something out there in the exclusive economic zone of South Korea. So it can be a dangerous thing.
Right. That's why our government made some warning in Ulleungdo area.
Right. Okay. So tell us how you became interested in North Korea and how you came to study topics related to North Korea.
Oh, well, it's kind of long time ago, like 20 or 15 years ago. I was kind of very serious kid about my career, what I have to do for life and in my life. And I set some period of time to think about it. And I reached to a conclusion that I want to do something in public sector, not private sector. And among many issues in public sector, I thought about national development. And I'm not such a big patriot, but I would like to contribute to my nation. And I thought about that North Korean issue is so huge and so big in our country because as you see in political things, military, economy, we have Korea risk, things like that.
Yeah.
It made so huge impact on our society, and I feel very frustrated about that. So I started learning North Korean issue.
Okay. And what was your PhD research about?
Oh, it was about de facto privatization phenomena. I say de facto because de jure in a law or system, official system, privatization should not happen in North Korea. But in reality, it happens now. So I deal with that issue.
What kind of industries in North Korea have seen de facto privatization?
I would say all over the industry.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So it's everything from farming to shipping to... Probably no defense industry de facto privatization, I'm guessing.
When I say privatization, I approach that issue with the property right. When we say property rights, it consists of three things. First of all, you have to control some asset or property.
Right.
And after control it, you have to be able to make use of it, make some money from the property.
Yep.
And thirdly, the ultimate, the level is you have to be able to transfer it. You have to sell the property. Then you can say that I have a full right of a property. So in that...
And you're not just talking about land, are you? You're talking
about... No, the building, ships.
Yep,
yeah,
okay.
Everything.
Any asset?
Yes, means of production.
Means of production,
yes.
Okay.
So in that perspective, in defense area as well, they can, someone might control the military truck. They can make money from it. Sometimes they can transfer. Then we can say it's a privatization.
Okay,
yeah,
wow.
That was my concept, yes.
All right, that's very interesting. Have you published your PhD as a book in English?
Oh, no, in Korean, but I hope so, yeah.
Okay. All right. So give us a quick overview of the different research projects that you have worked on at the Korea Maritime Institute that are related to North Korea.
After I got a PhD, the first study I did was the fishery trade after 2010 May 24th measure.
Now, remind us, what is the 2010 May 24th measures?
Because it's after Cheonam incident.
Okay, when North Korea sank a South Korean naval ship.
2010, I think.
Off the island of Pengyongdo.
Right. So after that, the fishery trade stopped. The government made several measures. For example, we just did not allow North Korean ships to enter our territory, like, just pass through the Jeju Strait, something like that. And we stopped all the visit and, joint venture, things like that.
So this is President Lee Myung-bak's unilateral sanctions from South Korea on North Korea. Okay, the May 24th measures.
May 24th measures. So after that, I just tracked down how the fishery trade has been changed. Because even though we did not directly make trade with North Korea, but North Korean fishery, go to China and then, disguised and Chinese product coming to South Korea. So I follow the kind of trade data.
Now, how do you disguise a North Korean fish to look like a Chinese fish?
Oh, I would say I'm not a fishery expert, but I heard that it's different. It's more like Korean one, right? So when they make some inspection, they could see that this is Korean one, but they are saying that they are Chinese.
The fish itself?
Yes.
But fish don't have any nationality.
Oh yes, but how do you say they have some the origin of a species, right? There are certain kinds that they just live in Korean territory.
Okay. So they took some fish that only live in North Korean waters.
Yeah, or South Korean water.
And they're pretending that they're Chinese fish.
Yeah.
And then selling them to somebody who then sells them to Korea. Because they can't sell directly to South Korea.
Yes.
So they have a Chinese middleman or middle woman
right.
who's helping them. Okay. All right. Keep going. So you did fisheries, and what else have you looked at?
Oh, actually, when I just first joined KMI, my seniors focused on fishery, so I started with fishery.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, recently, I move a little bit toward shipping because I need to learn more about these issues. So recently, I made some research on the Korean shipping data. The vessels come and go out to and out of North Korea since 2077 until
2007.
77. I'm sorry, 1977.
Oh, from 1977.
Yeah, from 1977.
That's 45 years ago.
Yeah. Since then till 2021.
That's a lot of data.
Yes.
You must know our colleague Ethan Jewell, who does.
Yes.
He's our shipping tracker expert.
Right.
Okay.
We haven't discussed about it. Yeah. So we track down how the vessels go, how much far, and how has been changed, and we made some research on it. It's a very recent one.
And you also look at North Korean ships disguising themselves as not North Korean ships.
Yes.
Or ship-to-ship transfers, secret sales of ships, etc. Okay.
Yes.
Wow, that's a very interesting topic of discussion. Have you ever visited North Korea?
Oh, yes, once. It was 2008, June. I remember the exact date because it was when Yongbyon nuclear reactor, the tower, it was explode.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Were you there in Yongbyon?
Yes.
Why were you there in Yongbyon?
I exactly remember because I went there for delivering humanitarian aid products. But
from South Korea?
Yes, from South Korea. I was working for NGO, but at that time, we were trying to visit Myohyang Mountain Myohyang, but it was on the way to Yongbyon. It was near, so they did not allow us to go there.
To Myohyang?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So where did you go?
Oh, so we couldn't just go so we just stayed in Pyongyang.
Oh, okay. So you didn't go to Yongbyon?
No.
Okay, you just stayed in Pyongyang.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And how was that visit?
Oh, it was about a week, less than a week, but I was very young at that time, and I was very afraid, and I was kind of very scared. I could not speak well because with my mouth, like I couldn't say Busan, right? I could not say, I have to say Joseon.
Would they get angry if you said Busan?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've been trained a lot about that. So it was very hard. When I just returned from the North Korea and when I arrived in Incheon, I just cried because it was so stressful for me. Yeah.
I from my experience in North Korea, I know that they like it very much if you say 윗동네, 아랫동네 for North Korea, South Korea. That they seem to enjoy that a lot. So you can try saying that one next time. For those listeners who may not be familiar with Korean, it means sort of the neighborhood up there and the neighborhood down there instead of north or south. Yeah. So you've done a lot of academic research related to tourism in North Korea. Now, during COVID, of course, there has been zero international tourism, not from China, not from anywhere. Do you think that the tourism sector in North Korea will recover again? And if so, when?
I have to mention that North Korea, the Kim Jong-un actually really want to develop tourism industry. It was the time period is almost the same when he had a power and started development of a tourism industry. It was exactly the same. It started from 2013, I think.
Right.
So I think if he can do, I think he will open the tourism again. But the problem is the sanction and the COVID-19. And I might say that he may lost his kind of desire for inter-Korean tourism because he has not got anything for the last couple of years. So I will say that he will turn to Chinese or Russian tourists.
He'll focus on those tourists. Okay. Well, okay, let's talk about your most recent research, which is on maritime and fisheries issues after the 2017 sanctions and the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, a bit of background here for our listeners. North Korea tested its sixth nuclear device and its first intercontinental ballistic missile back in 2017, and that's when the world community under the United Nations Security Council placed heavy economic sanctions on North Korea. Now, instead of changing its behavior, North Korea decided to follow a path of self-reliance, maybe because it didn't expect the sanctions would last for a long time. So what effect did those sanctions have on North Korean maritime and fisheries industries before the COVID-19 pandemic?
For fisheries, definitely the sanction made a ban on export item coal, minerals, and clothing and fish. These three are main items banned. So
North Korea is not allowed to export fish or fisheries-related products anymore.
Yes. They have they made some ban on seafood area, the whole sector. They cannot sell anything. So some might say that in comparing to coal export, fish export, the volume or the money revenue is quite small comparing to coal, but still we cannot say that it is nothing because fish export, it amounts about $1 billion to them. It's almost equivalent to the income wage from the Kaesong industrial complex. So it is something to them. So it is a big change. And because they cannot export the fish, I also see that the production of a fishery also decreased. It just pointed its top amount in 2016. Maybe they made a very strong drive since 2013 on fishery sector. They reached their top capacity. But still, I think they lost their motive or incentive to capture more fish because they cannot sell any longer. And also sanction made some they cannot import enough oil any longer. So they have to save the oil. They have to save the fuel.
So the oil which is used in the fishing boats.
Right, yes.
Okay.
They cannot put their oil, even though, they cannot sell the fish. Then why do they put their oil into the fish? The fishing vessel.
Right. Now, I noticed that North Korea has sold some fishing rights to China, particularly in the crabbing areas over there on the west coast. When I went to Yeonpyeong-do a couple of years ago, we saw the Chinese boats very, very close to the island. So is this a way that North Korea gets around the sanctions, that since North Korea cannot fish and cannot export the fish, it just sells the rights to China? And if so, is that covered by sanctions? Is North Korea technically blocked from selling fishing rights to China, or is that actually allowed under sanctions?
Oh, I think it's a good point. Yes, besides the seafood sector, the selling fishing line is also banned by the UN sanctions. So basically they cannot do. But it's tricky because in the West Sea, China, it has also their exclusive economic zone. It just meets with our economic zone or North one. So sometimes they just break it, but we cannot just touch it because we're EEZ is overlapped.
Right.
So West Sea is kind of tricky, but the real problem happens in the East Sea.
Oh, in the East Sea between Korea and Japan.
Yes,
okay.
And also there is Russia and North, and North Korea sell their fishing ground to the third country. We are calling it China, but anyway, the Chinese or the third country's fishing vessels enter into North Korea's.
But it's difficult for China to access that area directly. Does it have to go around South Korea?
They do that.
They go around South Korea, past Jeju-do, past Busan, where you live, and then they go all the way north into North Korean territorial waters, and they do fishing there.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a big problem, actually, because most of their vessels are from Shandong province.
Yes, the peninsula.
There is some area or period that Chinese government did not them to fish for protecting the fishing ground. Those period they buy fishing vessel from North Korea and they just come into the fishing ground of North Korea.
So because they cannot fish locally around Shandong, they have to come over to North Korea's waters.
Yeah, the problem is that if they got too much squid there, in South Korea, we cannot capture fish because they capture too much.
But they're not capturing fish from South Korean waters, are they?
Yeah, but squid, the cuttlefish something,
yes.
They are just moving around
to
Japan, North Korea, South Korea. So if they cut too much, we cannot have more squid in South Korea.
Well, I'm not a big fan of squid, so I don't mind too much. But I understand that Korea has a lot of squid lovers.
Yeah, Gangwon province and Gyeongbu province, the local officials, they made demonstration here, like National Assembly, something, and we could die if government doesn't do anything.
Right. Okay. Now, going back to the sanctions there, why do you think North Korea believed that the United Nations sanctions of 2017 would not last for a long time?
Well, I have different opinion there. I think they did not expect that. It's not going to last a long time. I think they expected it. That's why they came out to the table in 2018 and 19. That's my perspective.
Okay. Now, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected North Korean maritime and fisheries industries?
I have to go back to fishing light. Actually, after the sanction, even though it is banned, the selling fishing light, it actually increased. More fishing vessels entered North Korea.
From a third country?
Yes. It was what happened after sanction.
Mm-hmm.
But because of COVID-19, it decreased, really decreased.
And why is that?
Because North Korea is afraid from, the virus infiltration. They did not allow them to come closer to their territory. So, they set some certain kind of rules on that. So that's the first thing. And for...
Right, because as far as we know, since early 2020, North Korea has not allowed any people to come in.
Yes.
Not North Korean people or people from any country.
Yes.
No one has been allowed to come in. And that includes fishermen from third countries, which may or may not be China.
Oh, actually, they opened the fishing ground, but they just moved the line or allowed the fishing ground to toward outside.
Right. So
not come closer.
Yeah, stay over there. Don't come near the coast. You're not allowed to come to port. You're not allowed to refuel, etc. Okay. So has that had a big economic effect then for North Korea?
To North Korea, maybe they could have lost some amount of foreign currency. Yeah.
Right. Now, as for shipping, has all North Korea's ports been closed since 2020?
No, not really. Actually, they close when they close the border.
Yeah.
Sometimes they open the ports, even though they close the train and trucks from China, but they still open ports.
Like Nampo, for example.
Yes.
Okay.
So they do the maritime trade, even though they close the overland trade.
But they have some strict quarantine regulations, don't they?
Right. So the foreign vessels should wait outside the Ganmun, Seohae Ganmun. How do you say in English?
That is the West Sea Barrage.
A barrage, yes. So the foreign vessels should stay there for a month, maybe. They cannot enter.
So
yes.
the crew has to stay on the ship outside on the high seas, waiting to be allowed to come in. And that's
not high sea, but in their territory water.
In North Korea territory water. Yeah.
Not into their
right. So for a month, they have to eat their own food and basically stay like prisoners on the ship before they're allowed to go into Nampo. Okay, well that's a disincentive to many shipping companies to go there because that resource, that ship, cannot be used for anything for a month.
Yeah.
That's quite costly.
Yes, of course. But recently they just loosened the restrictions. So nowadays it decreased to 15 days, something like that, and they allow the ship crew to come into their coast.
Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about a little bit about coastal tourism. You mentioned earlier that when Kim Jong-un came into power, he wanted to really ramp up the tourism industry. We had the development of the Maashigyeong ski resort and the village up there in Samjiyon and all sorts of things. But also he began to develop the Korea Peninsula near Wonsan to make this big tourist village, maybe for Chinese or South Korean tourists. Was the Korea project completed?
Oh, I checked the how much time they mentioned about Karma Resort. It started from the construction of Karma Resort. It started from 2018 January. They start mentioning it, and it ends in 2020 June. So I think till that time, I think they made their construction. It is their frames are completed, but the interior things are not completed yet.
So it's never opened for tourists.
No.
Okay. When North Korea opens its borders, do you imagine that Kalma will be finished and will start to receive tourists? Obviously, no South Korean tourists, as you mentioned, but maybe Chinese and Russian tourists?
Yes, because Kim Jong-un made much effort in it. It was a national agenda, kind of. So I think he will restart it,
Okay, now North Korea has also been trying some land reclamation projects. South Korea has done that too, most famously in the Saemangeum Bay on the southwest coast of Korea. Why has North Korea been reclaiming land? What's the purpose?
Oh, it's kind of came down from their ancestor, how do you say it, from Kim Il-sung period it started. So in 1976 something, they made some rule how to manage the land. There are 5 ways to manage land. One of them is reclamation. So and in
for agriculture?
Yes.
Okay.
Because their North Korean land are not fertile, so they have to find new land for farming. So
but is reclaimed land reclaimed from the sea? Is that fertile?
it takes some time.
I see.
Because there are so many salt.
Right, a lot of salt.
Yeah,
How
it
do you
takes
make?
time.
I mean, I'm not an expert in this. How do you make reclaimed land fertile?
Oh, I don't think so. But at least we cannot farm, but we can build something, make some building, and we can just make some residence there. So anyway, so they set some kind of goal in 1981 something. They trying to make 300,000 hectare in total. They set the goal in 1980, and they're pushing that goal till now.
Oh, they're still working to get the 300,000 hectares. Okay. Now, what has happened to these land reclamation projects? What are they doing with it?
Recently, in 2010, they made a big accomplishment now because they put much effort in it. So Kim Jong-il made this is kind of an example. And then they just get some strength from the accomplishments. They put much effort in it. So recently, in the mid-2010, the frequency of mentioning the reclamation has been just increased so much, and they put their all efforts in it.
So Kim Jong-un has made it a focus area. I see. Now, isn't land reclamation from tidal flats ecologically a bad idea because it destroys this natural ecosystem, the tidal flats?
Yes. In my understanding, the advanced country, they realize the negative effect. They stopped there, like in 1980s, they stopped already, but like South Korea and North Korea, we didn't realize that. Right. So we kept doing it. And now we see that the wetlands, the tidal flat is kind of a wetland. Yeah. A wetland is kind of an organ of a planet. Right. It's kind of a lung. We can breathe with lungs. So wetland absorb lots of CO2. Yeah. It's very important. So, but I don't know. North Korea does not realize it.
I know, coming from the Netherlands, that has a lot of land, in the past, a lot of land reclamation projects. But that's all finished now. Now it's all about trying to preserve what little wetlands has been left there.
Yes.
So I remember reading somewhere that Korea is one of the last natural wetlands in the world, and it's now disappearing both in North and in South Korea. Does the KMI try to advocate, hey, let's protect the wetlands?
Yes, that's one of our area. Yeah, wetland. The West Sea. The wetland is one of the very big tidal flat in the world.
Is the South Korean government continuing its land reclamation projects, or have we finished here in South Korea?
No, not really. We are not trying to do it any longer.
I see. So on a related note, how has Kim Jong-un shown a changing response to climate change issues? What are his priorities in climate change?
Recently, he made some speech or report in September 2022, and he mentioned that there are two big national agenda, very important national agenda in recent years. One is land management, and second is anti-flood afforestation.
Anti-flood reforestation.
Yes, reforestation.
So, because we know that after the Korean War, most of North and South Korea was empty of trees. And of course, North Korea had this agricultural policy of let's grow rice on the mountainsides. And so even more trees were cut down. Yes. And so now North Korea wants to reforest as a flood control measure.
Yes. So he mentioned that these two things are national agenda in recent years. So I see that he's aware of disastrous climate change and effect of it. There are lots of droughts, flood, and typhoon. And when such a disaster hit the country, you see the damage on the crops, and it could lead to food shortage. It could be real dangerous to him, so to North Korea. So that's his point of view.
So remind us again of those two areas. So it's
land management.
Land management.
It includes reclamation, things like that. How to manage the land area.
Okay.
That is first one. And second is preventing natural disaster.
Right. Okay, back to fisheries for a moment there. What's happened to the price of fish in North Korea since the borders were closed due to COVID? Have fish prices gone up, or are people having a harder time eating fish in North Korea?
Now, this year, we are tracking the fishery prices, but for several years, we could not have that data, so I cannot say it in very numerical data, but according to the reports or other, journalistic some paper, they have contact with North Korea, and they mentioned that the price of fish has been increased about 30% to 300%.
Between 30 and 300%.
Yes,
That's a big
so
range.
No. I mean, it depends on the item, the species. Yeah, I cannot call the name, but there are main fish items in North Korea people enjoy. So because they stop export and they just close the door, and fish should they stay inside North Korea, but there is a problem with distribution, things like that. And also sometimes because of COVID-19, the fisherman was not allowed to go out for fishing.
Really?
Yes.
Was that seen as a danger?
Yes,
if you go out fishing, you might catch COVID on the sea?
Right, yeah, maybe.
It's not very logical.
I know, but they are very afraid to the trash, birds, everything could be a channel of a virus, yes.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about shipping. Now, North Korea, as I mentioned earlier, it's active in ship-to-ship transfers to export coal and import oil. Why does it transfer raw materials from ship to ship in the open sea? It seems like an inefficient and maybe even a dangerous way to work.
Yeah, because there's no other way, right? Because of sanction, they cannot sell coal over land trade. So that is the first reason. And after that, because of COVID-19, they have to shut the door. They close the door. Then the opened way is a maritime trade. So they use it. Even though they know that it's inefficient, it's very inconvenient, it's dangerous, but there's no other way.
Okay, so thinking about COVID, you're trying to avoid contact with people. Just practically speaking, if North Korea sends a ship from Nampo to somewhere near Shandong, and somebody in China sends a ship from Shandong to meet that ship near Shandong, is it possible to transfer coal or oil from ship to ship without the people actually meeting? Is that practically possible?
Well, maybe they can maintain some distance, and even though they have some contact, it's better to make lots of people to contact because there are just a few. And when they come back to their land, they make some inspection period so that they cannot have.
So the North Korean ship may have to wait 1 month outside the West Sea barrage also?
For their domestic vessel, they did not take that so long.
Okay, so the North Korean domestic vessels have a shorter period.
Yes.
Interesting. Now, so right now, what is a more important source of trade for North Korea? Is it overland trade or maritime trade?
Well, it has been changed several times since sanction. It is an interesting point.
Yeah.
Before sanction, since 2016, they made a strong drive in selling coals. So at that time, the maritime trade was superior. It was predominant. And then because of sanction, coal export was not allowed, then it just dropped again. So in those period, overland trade was predominant.
Right.
And COVID-19 again, they shut the door. Now maritime trade is predominant.
Okay. Well, so it's we've seen a lot of changes in the last 5 years then. Now, North Korea in August this year declared an end to the COVID pandemic. Kim Jong-un famously pronounced that we have victory over COVID. Is North Korea still maintaining strict border control with China and South Korea, both overland and maritime?
Oh, yes. They keep a lot. They just older people not to touch anything strange from the coastline. I mentioned the trash, birds, or anything. And on that August speech, Kim Yo-jong mentioned that the first place of outbreak of virus, the COVID, is the border area with South Korea. She mentioned that area.
Right.
I think with this event, I think she tried not to take any flyers from the south, and she makes some warning to people not to touch something from South Korea.
Why are they maintaining these strict controls even after they have pronounced victory?
Oh, but victory is not forever because things could come again. And I see that when they first proclaimed the maximum emergency system, it was just after when North Korean defector went back to North Korea from through the Kaesong area.
Oh yes, he swam across the Imjin Gun and went back to Kaesong.
Yes, and then they proclaimed the maximum emergency system. So they are very, very threatening about.
So they're still worried about a possible infection. But China has a zero COVID policy. North Korea has some kind of zero COVID policy.
Right.
Surely you would think that now it would be safe to have overland trade, maritime trade with China. But North Korea is not going that way.
Right. I would say that now we are kind of free from
Mm-hmm.
COVID-19. We can be safe. We feel safe because we have some kind of vaccination right now.
Oh, you mean here in South Korea?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But in North Korea, they are still,
Unvaccinated.
they don't have unvaccinated, so they could be very, very afraid and anxious about it.
Now, I understand that you and your colleagues at KMI have sketched out 4 scenarios for North Korea for the next 5 years, and they're pretty broad scenarios, but mainly looking at economic issues. So please, could you tell us about those 4 scenarios?
Yes, there could be so many kinds of scenarios. So we made some variables, external condition and an internal, domestic condition of North Korea. An external condition is about Chinese-Russian bloc.
Mm-hmm.
When they get closer and North Korea can depend on their power, they can survive. This is one variable. And second variable is negotiation with the U.S. If U.S. and North Korea can restart denuclearization negotiation, they can make another opportunity for survivor. These are the external conditions. And for domestic condition, we picked 2 things. First one is related to climate change.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned, that time goes by, natural disaster becomes a big issue. So if
in North Korea, when we think natural disasters, mainly we're thinking about flooding or drought.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Those are the 2
main
major.
things.
Sometimes a typhoon as well can be
Right.
the third one.
Yes,
so flooding, drought, typhoons.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So if they do not respond to this kind of disaster adequately, they can make some big problem in food supply. That is the first condition. And second is their self-supporting economy. They are trying to make everything inside, right? If we fail to make and supply daily necessities, this can be another danger. So we picked these 2 as a domestic international condition.
Okay, so the 2 domestic conditions are responding to or preparing for natural disasters related to climate change. And the second one is the ability to be self-sustaining in terms of domestic consumption, food and other things.
Yes.
And the 2 international conditions are whether or not North Korea negotiates with America and whether or not China and Russia become closer and form a kind of a bloc.
Yes. So with this 4 variable, we made several, metrics.
Right,
And we made some scenarios, and we thought that Chinese Russian, their bloc and denuclearization negotiation, these 2 things cannot go together, because when China and Russia, they are so close and they support North Korea, North Korea does not have any incentive to
negotiate.
Yes. So we just reject this kind of scenarios. So we just downsize the number of scenarios. So we made a 4 scenario.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So first one, Chinese-Russian bloc, they are so strong and North Korea can depend on it. In that case, no matter what, even though they fail in responding to climate change or some self-supporting economy, they can survive because they can depend on China or Russia.
Like in the 1990s, after the failure of communism, North Korea survived because China continued to help it. Okay.
Yes, exactly. That is first scenario. And second scenario, China and Russia, they don't get close any longer from at this moment.
Yeah.
And China and North Korea cannot depend on it so strong. And then U.S. and North Korea can make some opportunity to talk again. That is second scenario. In that case, maybe even though North Korea get in trouble, U.S. or South Korea can help them.
You mean like economic trouble or a natural disaster?
Both of them.
Both,
so that is second scenario. And third scenario, external conditions doesn't help North Korea. It's just no China, no Russia, no U.S. Even though they are still there, but not just did not bring full range of support.
Yeah.
And then domestic condition becomes very, very important. And if they fail in one of them, like climate change things, food shortage or daily necessities, like one of them, if they fail, it could make very dangerous situation.
When you say dangerous situation, we're talking about internal instability, right?
Yes.
Some kind of perhaps a famine, like in the 1990s.
Yeah, they are just
people moving around looking for food, or maybe some kind of unhappy people expressing their unhappiness.
Yes. That is the kind of worst scenario, and that is actually the last scenario, fourth scenario. And third scenario is they can make it. They can just survive. They just respond to climate change very well, and they are accomplishing their self-supporting economy. That is third scenario. So we have 4 scenarios.
Okay. Now, you mentioned as one of the international scenarios that North Korea may or may not be able to negotiate with the United States on denuclearization and sanctions. Now, recently I interviewed Ha-Lin Han from the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, or KIE. She and her colleagues looked at possible models in Southeast Asia for North Korean economic transition. And she said there were many possible options and there were 4 potential models. But the one thing that she said is an absolute necessity for any of these models is that North Korea must improve its relationship with the United States. She said that all 4 of those Southeast Asian countries, so Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, all of them improved their relations with North Korea before their economies transition. Without that, nothing can really be done. Do you agree?
Yes, of course. Yeah, definitely. Because in nowadays, UN is also, not controlled but influenced a lot from the US, and US has a, kind of privileging and all kinds of system, the financial things and trade, and even China, they entered the WTO system maybe in 2000, something like that. So it took a long time to get some approval from international society to get aid. So if North Korea will need many international aid and funds, and for doing that, it had to enter the WTO, IMF, or the World Bank. All of them are required to be approved by the US.
Right.
So without it, maybe North Korea cannot make it.
Now, with these 4 scenarios that you sketched out, you did a survey of 25 South Korean experts on North Korea issues. Which scenarios did they find most likely or plausible?
Based on the survey, they supported the first scenario and the fourth scenario.
So the very most optimistic and the most pessimistic.
Right. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the first one in China and Russia, they made some block and they became so strong, and North Korea can survive depending on their power. That is the first scenario. And the worst thing, otherwise, North Korea could have failed in self-supporting economy.
Right. Okay. And so those are the 2 most likely scenarios according to your survey of 25 experts. What is the likelihood that North Korea will suffer natural disasters along its coast in the next 5 years?
Well, it is not easy to make some numerical data, but 25 experts, they agreed that more than 80% agree that there could be some coastal disaster in the next 5 years because of the drought, flood, things like that, and also food shortage. Yeah, it's their forecasting.
That's not just the coastal area; that's all throughout North Korea.
All throughout North Korea, yeah.
What other results did you find interesting in this survey?
Well, not interesting, but for me, I'm looking for the maritime and fishery issue, and I'm so keen to it. But other experts are not like me, so they were kind of less aware about ship-to-ship transfer or things that happen, because I thought that North Korean vessels or some vessels cooperating North Korean vessels, they could visit South Korea as well. They use some kind of the shipping routes. But experts were not that aware of that. So I think we need to learn more about this issue.
Which of the 4 outcomes do you think is most likely?
Well, my personal point of view, I would say the first scenario is most
so a Russia-China bloc helping North Korea financially, economically, and with humanitarian aid.
Yes.
Propping up the North Korean regime.
But it doesn't mean that North Korea would not have natural disaster. Right. I still think that there could be some problem in food supply and shortage.
Now, as a result of this research, did you or the KMI give some advice to the South Korean government? Here is what we should do to prepare?
Yes. For the Ministry of Unification, we made some suggestion to track down and keep eye on vessel traffic, so that how North Korean vessels are moving and whether they are come to our port or not. They
should subscribe to NK Pro. We have an NK North Korea vessel tracker.
Yes, I recommend that. This is the very first thing we can do and we should do. Yeah, and also secondly, we have to set some amount of money for humanitarian aid. We have to make some plan
to get ready for possible natural disasters. Yeah, the first one you mentioned is interesting because sometimes, I know in the last couple of years, it seems like North Korean ships have come to South Korean ports without the South Korean government's knowledge.
In a sense, I'm not sure whether we can call it North Korean vessel, but yeah, some vessels that is related to North Korean
right.
activities. Yes.
Yeah, and that's a bit embarrassing for the South Korean government when they don't know this, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you think the South Korean government will prepare funds for potential disasters in North Korea? I mean, money's always a problem, isn't it? Money's always tight. You have limited budget.
Well, it's sad, but we have plenty of money actually for inter-Korean cooperation. But the problem is that whether we can use it or not.
Yeah.
Even though we would like to use, sometimes North Korea does not want to, receive it.
And that is another problem, because I think even during COVID, when Moon Jae-in was president, he said, we'd like to give you some things, masks, personal protection equipment, and vaccinations. And North Korea said, thanks, but no thanks, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think we should be more shrewd in giving that.
More shrewd. Like maybe give it through a third country.
Yes, I think so. Some international agency or something.
Or an international
right,
agency.
Yes.
Right, okay. Well, I have a bonus question for me, basically. In 1968, North Korea captured an American spy ship, the USS Pueblo, somewhere near the coast of Wonsan. And they held it there near Wonsan for several decades. And then sometime around 1999 or 2000, they moved that ship from Wonsan around Korea to Pyongyang. And now that vessel is in Pyongyang. Maybe when you went there in 2008, maybe you saw the Pueblo?
I think so. I saw it. Yeah.
Because they like to take tourists there. Every time I've been to North Korea, they've taken us to the Pueblo. How did that happen without the knowledge of the South Korean Navy or the South Korean authorities? How did they get around there?
What do you mean they get around?
They moved the ship from Wonsan to Pyongyang. It's very difficult to do that over land. The only way to do it is to sail around South Korea. How did they do that?
I'm not sure. They went through the sea or land.
They must have. They must have gone through the sea.
If it's it should go. If it goes to the sea, it's no problem. Actually, it takes time. It takes some fuel and money, but it can. It can. With the inter-Korean agreement, we used to allow North Korean vessels to pass through Jeju Strait.
Right, but that's not a North Korean vessel, the Pueblo. It's an American naval vessel.
Oh, yes, yeah. So maybe they have to just go around to Jeju Island, but it takes more time and more fuel, but it is possible, yeah. I think they thought that it is worth.
They thought it was worth trying?
Yes, because they can, demonstrate their victory over the U.S., so it is worth.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you once again for coming on the NK News podcast today, Dr. Yoon In-joo of the Korea Maritime Institute.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Great to have you. We hope to have you again and next time you make an interesting report.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you already have an NK News subscription, please take a look at our NK Pro platform, which offers unparalleled services like the NK North Korea Ship Tracker or Vessel Tracker, specifically catering to the needs of professionals who monitor developments on the Korean Peninsula. And of course, we also have the North Korea Missile Tracker. Every single missile launch, whether it's successful or a failure, is on that one. You can inquire about access and a free trial membership by writing an email to membership@nknews.org today. Also, if you have any feedback, questions, or guest recommendations, please send them to podcast@nknews.org. Our thanks, as always, go to Brian Betts and Arias Dare for facilitating this episode, and to Gabby Magnuson, our post-recording producer genius. Thanks, and listen again next time.